is a no doubt.
2, 1.
We Oriole Park at Camden. And Andy, I would like to wish you a happy quarter zip season for Joe.
Thank you.
Sure, season. I suppose season. It means to football season because we're in fantasy football season, which means we're getting closer to football season, which means for me personally, we're getting closer to stew season, which is a huge season for me. I know it's a huge season for you too. So this is an exciting time.
Very exciting. Also today, the weather is like my peak prime weather.
This is, argue with a wall,
Ideal.
This is the best weather.
Yeah.
If you can put on a hoodie and shorts,
and not like sweat wherever you're walking, it's great.
78 degrees to 82 degrees with a breeze is the sweet spot.
Yeah, but you and I had talked about which Ravens game day is going to be the ideal stew day. And
there are stew games and there are non-stew games.
It had to be a 4:00 game.
Yeah.
So I think that it was sometime in November. I forget which one. Ravens. But what stew are you going to make?
Different classifications of stew games. Duck roast, like kind of a pot roasty sort of
100%.
deal. Maybe there's like a noodle soup sort of deal. A chili feels like
really
you
is like really, really cold day game.
Maybe. I could see maybe an 8 o'clock. Your thoughts on this thing that we are talking stew game, then you understand exactly what we're talking games and certain games not.
Basically anything in a crock pot or a Dutch oven.
Anything in a Dutch oven or a crock pot, we're smooth. North team, like any team in a North division, you're feeling pretty good. Well, we've got a lot of Orioles baseball still to talk about. I know we are getting closer to football season, but we still have a lot of baseball season to talk about. There are some exciting things happening in Birdland right now. Kyle Bradish comes back yesterday and looks really, really good. I mean, 6 innings, efficient, just over 80 pitches, strikes out 10. If you are looking for signs leading into 2026, as many of us are over the last month plus of the season, then Kyle Bradish coming back and looking as good as he did yesterday is one of the biggest signs of hope for next year, I think you could say.
Yeah, and I think that the pitch velocity was basically the same as in 2024, which is always a good sign when a guy is coming back from Tommy John. But like you mentioned, it is a little bit of optimism for 2026. You can kind of start to dream on a starting rotation that includes Bradish, Trevor Rogers, Dean Kramer, Grayson Rodriguez. Hopefully, you don't know how he's going to come back into what form or shape that he will come back in as well compared to his 2024 season. But you can kind of start to dream on that rotation a little bit. Who knows what kind of offseason acquisitions will be. Some other guys, maybe prospects, will make their names for themselves in the rankings moving forward and into this spring training that's coming up in 2026. So you can start to dream on that a little bit with how well Kyle Bradish performed last night.
Yeah, that might be your opening day starter for next season. And I think you would feel really fine with that based on what we've seen from him. Like you mentioned, the velocity still looked good. That 97 mile an hour painted 2-seam on the inside corner in the first few innings, you went, all right, Kyle Bradish is here, and that's a great thing. That's about all the positive injury updates that we have, because once again, we're going to start our podcast with injuries. We're going to talk Samuel Basallo's extension. We are going to talk Trevor Rogers because he has just been so unbelievably good, and we need to dedicate a lot of time to him. But first, we're going to get these injuries out of the way. A few hours after our podcast last week, the news came out about Felix Bautista. Surgery to repair a torn rotator cuff and a torn labrum. We are not going to see Felix Bautista for a long time. The estimated recovery is at least 12 months. from a baseball perspective, there are a lot of things we can talk about. I think it just boils down to the fact that the Orioles will need to find a new closer for next season. And from a baseball perspective, you don't know what this means for Felix Bautista, given the fact that he just came back from Tommy John and is now undergoing really major shoulder surgery. I'm just gutted for the guy, considering the length of recovery it takes to come back from Tommy John. We saw him this year. He still looked really, really good. I know the velocity was down to a few ticks. It wasn't the same exact Felix Bautista that we saw in 2023, but it was just so good to see him back on the pitcher's mound, looking effective, still being a good, reliable closing option as one of the better relievers in the game still. And then to have an injury like this where, he calls down to the dugout mid-game, says he's not available, and you don't think it's something this severe, and then all of a sudden it is. I just feel awful for the person to undergo 2 surgeries with a recovery timeline like this. Baseball aside, that just, it sucks. There's no other way to put it.
Yeah, it is pretty tragic for kind of all facets of the situation for the club, for Felix, you name it. This is probably the last thing you would have wanted to happen. And yes, you can say, okay, well, at least it's not another elbow injury, but labrum and shoulder is just as bad, if not worse sometimes. So really, really feeling for Felix right now. And also this will kind of cause a lot more conversation in the offseason for how the bullpen will look for 2026 as well. We have already seen a lot of question marks in this bullpen throughout since the trade deadline, and a lot of people trying to kind of prove their role in a 2026 bullpen spot. But obviously this makes a big role open for 2026 as well in that closer. So who knows what'll happen on the club side, but for Felix, definitely thoughts and feelings go out to him. This is probably one of the worst injury updates we could have gotten all season long.
Yeah, it was about worst case scenario, given the injury that we heard about from Felix. I mean, we knew it was pretty serious based on Tony Mansolino's comments, but just brutal. And we're going to talk more in the offseason, I'm sure, about the Orioles' needs going into next year. Closer is unfortunately going to be one of them without Felix Bautista. Yeah. So hopefully we see him back on the mound at some point. It's going to be a while, and it's going to be a long recovery. 2 more injuries to talk about. Last week, we said that Jordan Westburg and Adley Rutschman were held out of the lineup with some injuries. Jordan Westburg, the wrist, Adley Rutschman, the oblique abdominal injury, whatever it is.
I think Westburg ankle.
I'm sorry, yeah.
He's had the wrist multiple times.
Had the wrist, now he's got the ankle. Jordan Westburg on the injured list. Mansolino saying he won't return until at least after the next road trip. Adley Rutschman on the injured list, and he said he'd be hopeful to be back this season. Not great.
Not great at all.
Not great. Obviously, the hope is that those guys just get healthy and have a fully healthy offseason. That is the priority at this point. You would still like the team to be able to win as many games as possible down the stretch, not because it means anything towards a playoff position, but just because, as Mansolino has said as well, you want to continue to establish a culture of winning here. This has been a good baseball team for the last 2-3 months. They just got off to such a poor start, but over the last 75, 80 games or so, this has been a top 10 team in baseball, winning percentage-wise. You would like to keep that going. Jordan Westburg and Adley Rutschman, obviously big parts of keeping that going. So just tough to be without those 2 guys for their leadership on and off the field and for their play, because they are 2 middle-of-the-lineup bats that you would like to have in there every day.
Yeah, and definitely difficult too at this point in the season. It's such a rare opportunity for the Orioles to be able to kind of integrate the guys that are going to be everyday players for next season and the core of this organization, but then also be able to integrate with guys like Samuel Basallo, Dylan Beavers, maybe a Jeremiah Jackson for next year as well. So it was a really rare opportunity that the Orioles had to be able to see how they play and the cohesion that they have with all of these new guys that are getting called up. So unfortunately, you won't be able to see that kind of integration, but it also grants the opportunity for a guy like Jeremiah Jackson. We've seen at third base a little bit, Vimiel Machine, Luis Vasquez at third base a little bit as well. So at least they get that opportunity in terms of the Basallo Rutschman catching duo. We won't get to see that much until next season, but at least you have Alex Jackson, who's doing very well. I think he led in hits last night offensively. So at least you have that kind of guy in Alex Jackson to be able to provide some time behind the dish that Basallo can also get some time either at designated hitter, first base.
Yeah, Alex Jackson is making a case at least to be the third catcher in 2026. Jeremiah Jackson, somebody that we have seen in the outfield a whole bunch, and it's good to be able to see him in the infield a little bit as well because, he's been playing some really good baseball. And again, somebody who is working into that conversation for next year. You want to see if he can fill a super utility role where he can play the left side of the infield. He can play a corner outfield spot. So as much as you don't want injuries to be happening, it is kind of the land of opportunity right now, and those guys are getting a chance to prove themselves and potentially be on this roster when things get back to being competitive in 2026. But Westberg and Rutschman, we'll see when they're able to come back. There's obviously not the same sense of urgency given where you are in the standings, so you just want those guys to play it safe a little bit because there's no point in pushing it and having an injury that lingers into the offseason and lingers into next season. But we're going to move off the injuries quickly because there are actual exciting things to talk about with this team. Samuel Basallo extended. Trevor Rogers has been the best pitcher in baseball for 2 months. We're going to start with Samuel Basallo because that was the big news of last week. He signs an 8-year deal worth $67 million with escalators and incentives that it could get it up to $88.5 million. He also has a club option for 2034, which is a made-up year. 2034 doesn't sound like a real time that a player could be signed until, but Samuel Basallo could potentially be with this team for the next 9 seasons. It is the largest pre-arbitration deal signed by a catcher in baseball history, the 4th largest contract in Orioles history, and the first extension under Mike Elias. We've been talking about extensions a lot. It is something that fans have talked about a lot, wanting to see this team do to, put some investment towards this young core that they are building. I don't know if Samuel Basallo was the first name that many people were expecting to get extended out of this core group, considering he just literally joined the big league team about 2 weeks ago. But he is the first one to get an extension. He plays about 3 big league games and then immediately gets a big contract. But this is kind of the trend around baseball. We saw it, Boston did it at the beginning of the year with Christian Campbell. They have locked up Roman Anthony. Plenty of teams around baseball lock up their top prospects before they even play any games. I remember the Tigers in the offseason locked up Colt Keith before I believe he had even stepped on a big league field. So this is not an uncommon thing around baseball, and it is smart of teams to get out in front of this a little bit.
Yeah, and it's not an uncommon thing right now, but it is somewhat an uncommon thing for the Baltimore Orioles, and it's definitely a hint and pretty huge, actually, a huge deal to kind of see what this new era under David Rubenstein might look like, and Mike Elias with David Rubenstein. So, and who knows, you can make the conversation of like, okay, would things have been different for Gunnar, Adley, Jackson if they had started earlier on with Rubenstein or whatnot? You can't necessarily think about that too much because you never know the answer or what it would have been like. But I think that for Basallo, for his family, for everyone that he is involved with, his agent, whatever, and then the Orioles as well, I think that this is a really, really exciting deal and opportunity. Just knowing what Basallo was like in the minor leagues and then the immediate translation to the majors. We haven't really seen so much from him in the last few games, but necessarily how he started was exactly what we expected out of Basallo, and you can only expect more because this guy is still only 21. He still only had a couple of appearances behind the dish in the big leagues. He showed great flashes of athleticism at first base last night.
Yeah.
So I think that this is a really, really important deal for the future of what the Orioles will look like under Rubenstein and Elias.
Yeah, and under no circumstances should we be judging this contract extension based on how Samuel Basallo plays for the last month of this season.
Right.
That is not why the Orioles made this deal. Samuel Basallo, as you mentioned, just turned 21, and he is figuring things out at the big league level. He hasn't had a ton of experience in the minors. He is quite literally the youngest player in baseball as well. So give him some time to figure it out. The Orioles would not have made this deal if they don't think that Basallo projects to be one of the better hitters in baseball, which he does. And make no mistake, this is an offense-first move. Samuel Basallo is a catcher, and if he turns out to be a big league catcher, awesome. You just got an unbelievable value for a position that is really hard to find good hitters. It is hard to find guys that can play decent enough defense and be producers offensively at that spot. If he doesn't pan out to be a big league catcher, you still have a first base DH hybrid type of player that has 40-plus home run upside. So you're trying to figure out the defense. The last month or so of the season will be for that, to see what he can do on the defensive side of the ball, whether that's literally the physical traits of doing it, the receiving, the framing, throwing down to second base on attempted steals, or just how he is doing off the field, game planning, how he is calling the game, how he is interacting with the pitching staff. All of that stuff is going to be really important. Whether or not he turns out to be a catcher or not, you are buying the offense. And that is why you make a deal like this. And I know if you're confused looking at the number value, an 8-year, $67 million deal seems pretty low for somebody with this much potential upside. You've got to keep in mind that Samuel Basallo is not even close to being arbitration eligible. Yeah. So this is not somebody who would have made a lot of money at the big league level for the next bunch of years. That is just how baseball is structured.
It just means it's a good deal for the Orioles, too.
Right. And so basically how this contract is going to work is that you are not overpaying based on the player's value, but you are overpaying Samuel Basallo for the first 4 years or so of this contract based on what he would have made before he hits arbitration. And then once he hits arbitration, maybe the dollar value is right where it would have been year one, and then you start to underpay him for his second year of arbitration, third year of arbitration, and then all of a sudden you are certainly underpaying him, for the years that Samuel Basallo would have hit the open market as a potential free agent, or if you were getting to that point and then we're trying to figure out an extension with him, you are underpaying him then. So it is a deal that makes sense for the team because of those last few years where you are getting a heck of a value for Samuel Basallo. And it makes sense for Samuel Basallo because for the few years before you hit arbitration, he is getting a lot more money than he would have.
Right. It's like at the short term, it might not necessarily seem like a phenomenal deal for the Orioles, but in the long term, it is, because when you think about how Samuel Basallo will be playing at that point when he reaches arbitration.
Yeah, you're underpaying him
when he's at his
prime.
Peak. Yeah, exactly. So I think that's also a big thing to note, too, is the long-term deal and success that the Orioles have gotten out of Basallo, especially when you look at the background on how the Yankees didn't sign him with their international pool money because they went out and got
that was a funny little butterfly effect.
Garrett Cole, and now you have someone in Basallo for the Orioles that you signed at $1.3 million back then, when you could have the Yankees didn't get him for someone in a free agent. It just kind of goes to show that free agency isn't everything.
Yeah, that was a fun story by Jeff Passan, if you missed that, where the Yankees go out and sign Garrett Cole in free agency because it was such a lucrative contract. They lost $1 million in international signing money, and they were going to sign Samuel Basallo, and then they lost that $1 million, and the Orioles, who were still pretty new in the international market, remember Basallo was part of their first class of international signings, they're able to swoop in and sign Samuel Basallo for $1.3 million, And that's how this works out now. The Yankees could have had Samuel Basallo. They opt for Garrett Cole, which obviously was not a bad move for them, but they don't know what Samuel Basallo is going to turn into. But now he turns into this, and he is somebody that the Orioles have locked down long term. It is, as you mentioned, a good sign for what the Orioles are maybe going to do with this young core, potentially bringing guys back and extending them long term. It is a good sign for the fact that they are investing in a winning baseball team. Yeah. I mean, Samuel Basallo is going to help you win baseball games. He is a good baseball player. He is going to turn into an even better baseball player. So it is an exciting time for the Orioles. I think it is a sign that is encouraging for the other guys on this roster as well. It's got to be that they are investing in the future and they are investing in guys being here. As Bradley on Facebook says, they better extend Annie Claff and start the contract negotiations.
All right.
It's just a good sign that the Orioles are investing in the future in this way, and they chose a really good dude in Samuel Basallo to extend. He's a good clubhouse presence. He is fun. He brings a lot of good energy. Yeah. And so he's going to turn into a really good player as well.
You also hear so much about how he was moving through the ranks in the minors, on how mature he was as a young guy coming in from an international market as well. And the maturity, what really speaks volumes to Basallo, and everybody has said that. You even had Trevor Rogers saying that after his first start with him catching with Basallo, or throwing to Basallo. So you just can really tell with Basallo the mature approach that he brings on and off the field. So really huge for him, not only as a player, but also as a person. Also a really encouraging sign for the international market itself. Just knowing this kind of extension can be made for a guy that might not necessarily have gotten that chance to become a Major League Baseball player if with another club, or just in terms of how good of a player you can be sought out to find in the international market.
Yeah, and it means a lot internationally, too, for the Orioles to have a success story like this, where when you are trying to sign guys in that international period, you can look and go, hey, you want to be Samuel Basallo? Yeah. You want to get an 8-year contract extension and develop in this player development system? And also, look, we have this brand new academy in the Dominican. They have so many things to point to at this point for the growth of the international system. And now they have a player that they have signed to a long-term extension and is going to turn into a good big leaguer. That's really important if you are trying to, persuade guys to come join your organization on the international market. So exciting time all around. Real quick, I don't want to focus on this too much, but there has been just a ton of discourse about what this means for Adley Rutschman. There's been a certain national baseball reporter pushing a certain narrative that it doesn't make sense.
No.
I'll have the Adley discussion real quick.
Yeah.
It could turn into a Brendan rant if we wanted to.
I would like to hear a Brendan rant.
Samuel Basallo, you just signed for the offense, as mentioned. If he turns into a catcher at the next level, that's awesome. Why on God's green earth would it make sense for the Orioles to move Adley Rutschman, especially at this point when Adley is having a down season where he's been oft injured? You don't want to move the guy when he's not at his peak value. If you did want to move the guy at all, Adley Rutschman is incredible defensively. He calls one heck of a baseball game. Every time we talk to a pitcher after a successful outing, it seems like they talk about how good of a game Adley Rutschman just called. We have seen Adley Rutschman at his best in Baltimore, what he can do his rookie year, his second year. It's a multiple-time All-Star who plays incredible defense behind the dish. You want Adley Rutschman and Samuel Basallo in the lineup as frequently as possible. If you are going into next season, it is more than likely that you are going to roster 3 catchers because you want Adley Rutschman catching, and when he's not catching, you want him at designated hitter. You want Samuel Basallo in the lineup somewhere, whether it is at catcher or at first base or at designated hitter. I think ideally going into next season, Adley Rutschman probably catches 3 or 4 times a week. Samuel Basallo catches once or twice, and somebody else catches once or twice, whether that's an Alex Jackson, a Maverick Hanley, or somebody else that they bring in free agency. Samuel Basallo, as high as his upside is, the upside is there offensively, and you hope that he turns into a good defensive catcher. But this is nothing against Samuel Basallo.
Right.
He is not where Adley Rutschman is defensively right now. And if you're this Orioles team and you have Adley Rutschman under team control for a while,
Right.
why would you move?
No.
Again, things could change in the offseason. I'm not saying that there is a 0% chance I'm not in the front office. But it doesn't make sense to me. And the discourse being, oh, they extended Samuel Basallo, there goes Adley Rutschman. No.
Right.
Why would you not want to have as many good baseball players on your team as you can possibly have if you are going into 2026 saying we're going to be competitive, and then you move Adley Rutschman, who's a multiple-time All-Star and great defender at catcher and has the capability of being one of the better offensive catchers in baseball?
No, I completely agree.
That's not what this extension means.
Right.
If you are making an Adley Rutschman decision, you are making it independent of the Samuel Basallo decision. You are not making it because you extended Samuel Basallo. Samuel Basallo was under team control anyway. As long as you had Adley Rutschman, you have extended Samuel Basallo past the Adley Rutschman years of team control. So why does this make a difference?
No, it doesn't. And I completely agree with you that these rumors do not make sense in the slightest because, yes, you can also look at how they went about at the draft. Yes, they got a number of catchers at the draft. That still also doesn't necessarily play into the future of Adley Rutschman either because you're going to have Adley Rutschman for as long as you can get Adley Rutschman and beyond. He is also, the front office has said numerous times that they're going to keep this core intact for 2026 and beyond. Adley is very much that core. He is a part of that core. He's led this core since the Elias era.
He's the face of the franchise.
He is the face of the franchise. That is not going to change. If they wanted it to change, they would have done that at the trade deadline, but that's not going to happen either. So Adley Rutschman getting traded in the offseason does not make sense just because you get Basallo. Instead, you are getting an even better catching duo. Yes, maybe you have Basallo doing some more defensive options, either at first base and designated hitter, but still you have kind of Adley to be the rock solid foundation behind the dish moving forward until his contract expires.
Yeah. Bottom line is if there is an Adley Rutschman decision to be made in the offseason, then the front office is going to make it independently of whether or not they just extended Samuel Basallo. Because Samuel Basallo was under team control for as long as you had Adley Rutschman under team control and longer already. So this changes literally nothing in the Adley Rutschman calculus. That can be its own calculation. And who knows what conversations those could be in the offseason. But those things do not correlate to the Samuel Basallo extension.
And I think that the comment that you made as well of, okay, we have seen Adley's potential be so good that why would you kind of just discount him for, I mean, obviously he's had a bit of a down season and last year was down in the second half as well, but you know that the potential is there. You know that the talent is there. It's going to come back. I mean, you can even take a look at Trevor Rogers, for example, completely different position, different even player as a whole. This guy's a pitcher, but he was an all-star when he first came to the big leagues, went down for a while, and now has come back to be an elite pitcher.
Yeah.
It's the same kind of thing in a sense where you have Adley Rutschman, who is the face of the franchise, and the talent is there. It's just untapped for right now.
Adley Rutschman is Adley Rutschman. We know what he does really well, and we know what the upside is. Samuel Basallo getting extended does not change that calculus whatsoever.
Yeah.
Ideally, I think you want both of them in your lineup as frequently as possible in 2026, because if you are going to be competitive, you just want good players.
Your best players.
Yeah.
And they are two of the best players at the big league level right now.
Yep. That's it. We're going to move on from that topic because I'm just going to rant more there. But you mentioned his name, so let's talk about
Let's do it. You like
the
my little
worst
segue?
trade in Orioles history. Let's talk about it. The worst trade in the history of the franchise, acquiring Trevor Rogers from the Miami Marlins. At least that was the narrative going into this season. Trevor Rogers is having one of the best 13-game stretches in baseball history. We're going to get to some of the just unbelievable stats for him, but I want to start with just some of the background here, because as mentioned, when the Orioles traded Kyle Stowers and Connor Norby to the Marlins, and Kyle Stowers has been having an unbelievable season. Good for him. Love Kyle Stowers. Great guy. Awesome to see him succeed out there. as soon as Kyle Stowers started hitting some more home runs this season than most people expected, and Trevor Rogers was down with injury, going into spring training and going into the season, everyone went, well, this is the worst thing that the Orioles have ever done. And last year, Rogers was not great in Baltimore. 4 starts, 19 innings, a 7.11 ERA, and an 18.42 whip. Thought maybe going into this season that he could be in the mix for that 5th spot in the rotation. Gets hurt in spring training with the dislocated kneecap, misses some time there. And then even when he's healthy and gets back to AAA Norfolk, it's 7 starts, a 5.46 ERA, a 15.51 whip, and 11.5 hits per 9 innings. So you're not really super convinced that this guy is going to come back and make any sort of impact. And then all of a sudden, he comes up for a start in Boston on May 24th as the 27th man in a doubleheader, goes 6 1/3 innings, no earned, 2 hits, 5 strikeouts, no walks. The velocity is up. The stuff is good. It plays. And then he gets sent back down. He's in Norfolk for a bit, comes up to start a game in mid-June against Tampa, 3 earned and 2 1/3. It was a really weird game that I was covering down there where the Orioles offense scored like 8 runs in a half inning. Trevor Rogers is sitting on the bench for half an hour, looked sharp in the first inning, comes back, fights through a second inning, just doesn't look great in that game. And then you kind of go, okay, maybe the magic was gone a little bit. And then really, ever since then, it has just been nothing but lights out baseball for Trevor Rogers.
It's just like the only way that I can come up with in my mind is like a comeback story, because it's true. That is exactly what this is for Trevor Rogers. You mentioned that 7.11 ERA as an Oriole after the trade deadline last year to 140 right now. It's quite ridiculous. And part of me is like, okay, I'm a little nervous to talk about this on the podcast because I don't want to jinx it. And I think that's why we haven't talked about it.
I know, but it just keeps happening. But even if Trevor Rogers goes out next start and goes 5 innings, 4 earned runs, you would go, okay, that's a thing that a normal human being baseball pitcher does. But Trevor Rogers doesn't look normal right now. The 140 ERA is the best in baseball among pitchers with 80 innings. We're talking about a guy who started 13 games. He's going to get Cy Young votes because he's been that good.
It's just like, it's absurd. The numbers here are absurd. I'm going to read some out.
Yeah.
An 8.28 whip. Phenomenal.
Yeah. When your whip starts with a 0 point, you're doing something well.
The strikeout numbers aren't as insane. It's about 8.2 strikeouts per 9 innings, but still, the command for Rogers is unreal. He has a 46% edge rate, 65% first pitch strike rate, so he's getting ahead in the count early. He's taking control of every single at-bat, or not every single, but most at-bats.
Yeah.
He leads all of MLB in fastball run value per 100 pitches with 3.1. Essentially, if you average out your run value on a pitch per 100, he has the best fastball in all of Major League Baseball. And I think I need to look at it right now, but I think that his batting average against on his fastball is below 2. Yeah. Which is ridiculous.
His changeup, by the way, in that metric is the 7th best in baseball.
So he's just doing really, really well all around. The mental aspect, though, for me, is a huge component to how he has really performed and done this comeback story, because he has come such a long way. We knew that right at the beginning, after he made that first start in Boston on May 24th, he had told the media, look, I considered changing careers. I considered if I could even be a top league baseball pitcher anymore. And to go from that and to say like countless times in post-game scrums that, okay, I have done months of mental practice to get to where I am and only focus on one pitch at a time. It's just really, really incredible to see how far he's come.
Yeah, and I think the biggest shift for me I saw out of Rogers, I mean, he comes back after the Rays start, like I said, and it wasn't great, but he was like, you know what, I felt good physically. I feel like I had my stuff and thought it was playing well. He has 2 starts against Texas after that. The first one, he goes 8 innings, no earned, 3 hits, 4 strikeouts, no walks. Sees Texas again and is good. And a huge hurdle, I'm sure for him, was the next start. He pitches against Atlanta, goes to Atlanta, a team that he saw all the time as a member of the Miami Marlins in the NL East. 6 2/3, no earned runs against a team that had tortured him. And we talked to him after the game, and he just said how good it felt to beat that team.
Yeah.
Because he said, that was a team that kicked my expletive for a lot of years in Miami. And so to come back and have that kind of performance against a team that had your number, it felt like kind of on a smaller scale what he had been dealing with for a while. Like the league had his number for a few years.
Yeah.
And he comes back this season, has a ton of confidence. It looks like a completely different pitcher mentally. He's not trying to make the exact perfect pitch all the time. He trusts that his stuff can play in the zone. He's throwing first pitch strikes. Like everything has been working. So I want to here just to emphasize how ridiculously good he's been. I would like to, Annie, if you will, just read a collection of ridiculous stats that I have
Please
found about Trevor Rogers. My personal favorite, before I get into some of the stats that are just absolutely bonkers, my personal favorite is that his ERA starting August was a 1.44. Okay? Since then, he has gone 6 innings, 1 earned run in a start, and 3 consecutive times gone 7 innings, 1 earned, and his ERA has only gone down to 1.40.
I know.
0.04 runs.
It's like basically
His
getting
ERA
worse.
has improved by, and he has gone 6 innings, 1 earned, 7 innings, 1 earned, 7 innings, 1 earned, 7 innings, 1 earned.
It's insane.
And his ERA barely got better. From friend of the program, Jacob Calvin Meyer, Trevor Rogers has the second most valuable season from an Orioles pitcher per Baseball Reference WAR since 2017, and he started 13 games.
Yeah.
At least by Baseball Reference WAR, he is rivaling Kyle Bradish's season where he was a top 5 AL Cy Young finisher, and Rogers has started 13 games. Speaking of those 13 games, if you just take Rogers' first 11 or 12 starts, he had better numbers, arguably, than Shane Bieber and Trevor Bauer did in 2020, who started 12 and 11 games respectively and won the AL and NL Cy Young awards during the COVID season in 2020. If you take a look at the Cy Young winning numbers from that 2020 season, Rogers is arguably better. All right, now we're getting to some stats that are just silly. A few from friend of the program, Just Baseball. He's the first pitcher in Orioles history to allow 2 runs or fewer in 11 straight starts.
Wow.
Think about some of the pitchers the Orioles have had. Jim Palmer, Hall of Famer. Mike Messina, Hall of Famer. Never did that. Trevor Rogers did that. Pitchers in the integration era, so since 1947, with an ERA below 150, 70 or more strikeouts, and 2 or fewer home runs allowed in their first 13 starts of the season. 1981 Nolan Ryan, 1994 Greg Maddux, 2025 Trevor Rogers.
That's insane.
If you add another parameter to that, which is 20 walks or fewer, that list is narrowed down to 2025 Trevor Rogers. Among pitchers, this is from Stats. Since ERA became official in 1913 for the American League, Trevor Rogers is the second American League pitcher to have a sub-150 ERA, sub-800 whip, and 0 or 1 hit batters through 12 starts in a season. The other is Walter Johnson in 1914.
It's ridiculous.
Like, this is one of the most ridiculous 13-game stretches that we have seen in Major League
It's
Baseball
historical.
history.
It simply is.
Yeah.
And it's insane to see how you can go from where you were in 2024 and 2023 to right now. All of those stats right now. It is an epic turnaround from Trevor Rogers.
Yep.
It's just really, really cool. And you are excited, by the way, that you got this guy with some team control.
Yep.
And at the trade deadline last
Worst
year.
trade in Orioles history.
A worst trade in Orioles history gave you a pitcher with a 1.40 ERA and has broken numerous records and stats. And you have him again for another season.
He's not going to win the Cy Young because Tarek Skubal and Garrett Crochet have been unbelievable for the entire
such a
season.
hard league to be in.
But by the time he gets to the end of the season, making fewer than 20 starts, we're going to look at Trevor Rogers' numbers. Now, granted, he could have a few blow-up starts towards the end of the season. Maybe this is a massive jinx. I don't care if it's a jinx. We're just talking about how good his 13 games have been. He could have a terrible 4 or 5 starts for the rest of the season, and this 13-game stretch and everything that he has done would still be unbelievable. He's going to get Cy Young votes.
Yeah.
And that's
100%
miraculous, especially just given the discourse of the season. And, we weren't talking negatively about Trevor Rogers in the offseason. We just weren't really talking about him because he didn't really seem like he would be a factor for the starting rotation. At the very least, he was in the conversation with Cade Povich and Chase McDermott and Albert Suarez. He was always in that group of a 5th or 6th starting option. He was a depth guy.
Yeah.
And that was fine.
And now he might be your ace next year.
And now there's a serious conversation to be had. We talked about Kyle Bradish potentially getting the ball for opening day next year. I mean, is Trevor Rogers in that conversation? Maybe.
It's interesting because Mansolino has been asked a few times now if both Bradish and Rogers have kind of put up ace caliber appearances. And both times Mansolino has said, listen, an ace to me is someone that can do it over consecutive seasons, which is valid. Sure. But he said that Rogers, how he looks right now, 100% looks like an ace, and he has that potential to do it. I think that if you had told me last year, let's say the end of the season or even in the offseason, that Trevor Rogers would lead this organization in baseball reference WAR, I would have told you were lying.
Yeah.
He has a 4.6 baseball reference WAR. The next player after that is Gunnar Henderson with 4.4. Let that sink in a little bit.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
And Rogers
Gunnar Henderson has been having a great season too. And Rogers, as you said, debuted at the end of May, didn't become a full-time starter until June. So if you're wondering how is this happening, there are a lot of stats to point to as to how this is happening. His fastball velocity last year was hovering around 91.5. This year it's up over 93. I know that doesn't sound like a massive difference. It is a massive difference because Rogers last year was kind of lucky if he was running it up to 93, 94. This year he is at 93, 94 consistently, and he can run it up to 95, 96 with the four-seam fastball. He's been adding in a sinker along with the four-seam fastball, sinker, two-seam, whatever you want to call it, and it just gives that four-seam a little bit of a different look as well. So he is still throwing fastballs a ton, but it's the four-seam, sinker, two-seam combo that has really been working well.
Yeah.
His in-zone rate, last year, 47.5%. This year, 56.5%. You mentioned how often he is throwing the ball on the edge of the strike zone as well. He is not leaving mistakes in the middle of the zone. His whiff rate has improved from 21% to 25.1%. His first strike rate, I think you mentioned this one, up at 65%. It was just at 58.5% last year, which means his first pitch swing rate has gone from 25% to 38%. Those stats just independently, you are looking at a pitcher that is taking command of at-bats.
Yeah.
He is not falling behind hitters. It is so much easier to pitch when you are 0-1 instead of 1-0 every time. It doesn't sound like rocket science to throw the ball in the zone, but there is a trust that needs to be there that your stuff can make guys swing and miss in the zone.
Right.
Where, you obviously don't want to leave it in the middle of the zone. That's a mistake. But if you are leaving it in one of the 4 quadrants of the zone, if you're able to command up, left, down, right, wherever you need to throw a fastball, you can be effective if you are not walking guys and if you are inducing weak contact, if you are forcing action is the biggest thing with these numbers that stands out to me. His swing percentage that, hitters' opposing swing percentages has gone from 46.2% to 52.7%. So he is forcing action. Maybe you could argue he has gotten a little bit lucky with the home run ball. It's just 0.2 home runs per 9 innings, but he's inducing pretty weak contact. He hasn't allowed a ton of home runs. His strikeout rate has gotten better from 17% to 24%. His walk rate down from 10% to 6%, and he is stranding guys on base at an 85% clip.
Yeah.
He is forcing the hitter to beat you. He's not going to make mistakes. He hasn't beaten himself a whole lot. He's not throwing meatballs that you can hit home runs off of, but he's also not going to walk you.
Yeah.
So you have to go out and beat Trevor Rogers. He has an outstanding fastball. He has an outstanding changeup. He's going to put it in or near the zone. Go beat him. And nobody's been able to.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up he doesn't walk anybody either. Because you take a look at his 2021 year. That was his all-star year. His whole StatCast page pretty much is in the red in 2021, except for pretty much the walk rate. He was in the 47th percentile for walking batters 8.4% of the time. This year, he's in the 84th percentile for walking them 6% of the time. That is a huge, huge turnaround. And when it comes to the control and the command that Rogers has exhibited this year, it's an insane, insane progress, even from that best year of his in 2021. I mean, you can say now that is clearly the best year for him, but that's a year where he was an all-star in 2021. And I think that what makes sense to me and something that's held on with me ever since you talked to Ben McDonald after that first start in Boston. Ben McDonald said, listen, okay, if you can get the command and you can locate your pitches exactly where you want them to, then of course your pitch velocity is going to come up because you have that confidence from the command.
Yeah.
And it just kind of works in tow with each other. So I think that the confidence has been huge for him this year because of that command and that control all in one. And it has in turn led to all of these fantastic outings with one earned run or fewer and going at least 6, 7, 8 innings deep.
His opposing batting average last year was 285. It's 171.
It's ridiculous.
Slugging percentage last year was 458. It's at 225 this season. His barrel rate last year, 8.5%. This year, it's under 6%. Everything has been good for Trevor Rogers. Now, of course, there is probably going to be a coming back to earth moment a little bit. His expected ERA, according to StatCast, is at a 3.02, but still, that's in the 87th percentile in baseball. He is not going to maintain a 1.40 ERA forever. He's not going to go 7 innings, 1 earned run every single time. But the fastball is so much better than it was last year. The command is infinitely better than it has been. I don't care if the ERA is at 1.40 or in the mid 2s or the low 3s. That is a really, really good pitcher. If you can maintain an 80-plus percentile expected ERA, an 80-plus percentile walk rate, barrel rate, that is going to play, whether the ERA is at 1.40 or 3.2. Like, that's still a really, really good pitcher, and it is so cool to see from a personal perspective, as we kind of led things off with here, where that's somebody who didn't know if he was able to pitch in Major League Baseball because he struggled up here for a while. He was struggling in AAA Norfolk. And so to see somebody like that who worked so hard to get back up here and is now proving to himself that he can do this, it's just awesome. And in an Orioles season that has not had a lot of fantastic stories and hasn't had as much success on the field as they want to, Trevor Rogers has turned into one of the best pitchers in baseball and one of the best stories in the game.
Yeah, it's been an incredible storyline to watch in Birdland here. I mean, he's made an exceptional case for himself to be most valuable Oriole as well. It'll be very exciting to see how that shakes out. But you're looking at a guy who is we've talked a lot about the fastball, and that's in the 97th percentile for fastball run value. The overall pitching run value, he has prevented 30 runs. That's in the top 1% of all MLB for overall pitching run value. That's just incredible to go from a guy who you full-heartedly doubted at the trade deadline last year, not maybe everybody, but
last year that pitching run value, as you mentioned right now, it's at 30. Last year it was at negative 23.
Yeah, it's just a complete 360 degree or 180 degree.
360, he would turn right back around and be in the same spot.
180 degree turnaround from 2024 to 2025, and you're going with a guy who could be leading the rotation in 2026, having prevented 30 runs on the mound.
Yeah, and that's an important note too. Just the calculus for next season, when you are looking at the Orioles potentially needing to bring in free agent pitchers, which, again, they do need to. We're going to talk about that in the offseason. But if you end 2026 with a Kyle Bradish that is giving you 6 innings, 10 Ks. The velocity looks the same. The spin rates look similar and everything looks good coming back from Tommy John. And a Trevor Rogers who all of a sudden transformed himself from a depth piece to, at worst, your number 2, number 3 pitcher next year. Hopefully you have a healthy Grayson Rodriguez as well. Dean Kramer going to be in that rotation next year, more than likely too. I mean, Bradish, Rodriguez, Rogers, those are 3 high-end pitchers.
Yeah.
If everything is fine health-wise and you are going into next season, that feels like a big if at this point, given what the Orioles have dealt with over the past few seasons. But if Grayson, Bradish, and Rogers are healthy, that does change your calculus for what you need to do this offseason. I'm not saying that the Orioles don't need to bring in a high-end starting pitcher. You would like to have as many good starting pitchers on the team as humanly possible. And you certainly need depth as well. But if those 3 guys are healthy, those are 3 high-end guys that you are excited about going into next season.
Definitely. And you've seen some good flashes from Dean Kramer as well. But you know how growing up when you were hoping for like a snow day, you would like sleep with a spoon under your pillow or something like that?
I'm excited to see where you go with this.
And like you would like flush ice cubes down the toilet. I think we need to come up with a regime of things that we can do to prevent injuries for next season, especially when it comes to Trevor Rogers and Kyle Bradish and Grayson Rodriguez.
Yeah, if you have any ideas of rituals that we can perform here on the podcast, let us know. Annie's bobblehead has not been working.
Are you kidding?
To prevent injuries.
Annie's bobblehead has helped Trevor Rogers become a 140 ERA starting pitcher.
We don't know the powers that Annie's bobblehead has.
I think we do, Brendan.
We don't know if they have been positive or if they have been negative. But I think that'll just about do it for this week's edition of the Bird's Nest. Exciting stuff happening here in Birdland. I know that the next month or so is not where fans wanted to be, but you get to watch Samuel Basallo, who just got extended. You get to watch Dylan Beavers. You get to watch Trevor Rogers continue to maybe be the best pitcher in baseball. You get to watch a lot of these young guys continue to find their footing and perform well. So still some exciting stuff to tune in for, to come to the yard for. So hopefully we'll see you here. If you're at Camden Yards, come say hi. But that'll do it for this week. Thank you for following along with us live on our YouTube and Facebook channels. We are live every Wednesday at 11 a.m. on those 2 platforms. We've been better about it recently. We've been live
spot
Wednesday
on.
at 11.
Yeah.
We've been here. I know there was a rough stretch there, but you can also catch us after the fact on Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. You can find us here on The Bird's Nest. Big thank you to Amy Jennings behind the scenes for producing this one. For Annie Claff, I am Brendan Mortensen, and we'll catch you next time.